Hi everyone, Stephen here at Teach Me Music, and today we're going to be talking about analytical listening and why it's important to listen analytically. So what do we mean by analytical listening? Well, let's have a look at the instrument that we're playing. We're playing the bass guitar and we're learning obviously the bass guitar as well. So if you don't know what the bass guitar sounds like or you can't hear it in a song, then how are you actually supposed to kind of learn it? How are you supposed to enjoy it? And also, how are you meant to pick out the part that you're meant to play? Well, that's what we mean by analytical listening. So the idea is a song, if you imagine it like a cake or you imagine it like a massive graph, the idea is that the bottom, the foundation of whatever you want to call it, is where the bass lives, because the bass is a really low-tuned instrument. So you have to hear all the way down to the bottom of the song, and sometimes that's easier. It depends on the song, depends on the style of music, but you need to be able to listen through a lot of different things to actually hear where the bass guitar lives and also what the bass guitar is playing. So it's really, really important to get used to listening to a song analytically. So I'm just going to break down music a little bit so you can pick a favorite song, and the idea is pick any song you like and try and hear the bass guitar part. Try and sing it, try and hum it, and just get used to listening to it and working out what's going on. You don't need to play it, because that will come some other time, that will be in a different lesson, but the idea is if you can hear it and you know where the bass guitar lives in that song, epic, you are listening analytically. So music, in my opinion, is broken down very generally into three parts. So you've got the bottom part, which is the foundation that holds everything else together, like a building. And the idea is that's where the drums and the bass guitar live. So the drums and the bass guitar go together to create what we call the rhythm section. And the rhythm section is basically the interplay and the relationship between the drummer and the bassist, or the drum kit and the bass guitar. So that holds the whole thing together. Then on top of that, which is the middle of the song, that's roughly where you hear what we call the harmony, which is chords, which is a lot of texture in music. And that could be guitar, that could be keyboard, could be brass, could be synth, it could be two guitarists if there's two guitar parts in the song. That's basically where the general information is, and that allows the top layer, which is the melody and the singing and the vocals and the lyrics, that's where that lives. So that is the top section of music. And if you just had the top section, that's the really catchy part. So you might hum along to it, you might listen to it, and you'd be like, oh, I know this song. But without the middle and without the bottom, the song doesn't really have a lot of context. So even though the bass guitar is at the bottom of the layers, it doesn't mean that it's not important. Realistically, it means it's actually more important, because if the foundation of anything is very weak, then that thing is going to topple down, it's going to basically crumble, it's going to break. So the drums and the bass are really important, even though they're all the way at the bottom. So that's bottom, middle, and top. And obviously the bass guitar can transition between all of them. So most bass guitar parts are kind of in the bottom layer. Sometimes there's a little bit of a bass fill, or what we call a bass break. That would be the middle. And then if you're into your solo playing and you're into your melodic playing, then that goes to the top. And it's because it's solo bass. So it depends what kind of music you listen to. So let's actually talk about how you're going to listen analytically to your favorite song. So step one, literally pick any song that you like and any song that you know. The second thing that we need to do is, if you have a mobile phone, which everyone does, this thing right here, this is actually the worst thing to listen to music on. And because the speakers on any phone are usually absolutely terrible. So the idea is that if you're listening to a song on a mobile phone, like the annoying people on a bus or like the annoying people on a train, that's a bad thing. You want to stop listening to music on your mobile phone right now. And I'm going to show you a few little tips that's going to help you to get away from listening to stuff that just doesn't actually reproduce bass very well. And just before we move into that, The reason why listening to music on your phone is really bad is because it just doesn't give you a lot of bass response. It doesn't amplify the bass frequencies, which obviously is the bass guitar, because the speakers are tiny. With bass responses and with bass frequencies, the bigger the speaker or the more powerful the speaker, the better and more definition it's going to give to the bass guitar. So the idea is that if you're touring, if you're gigging, you can use something like this. This is a massive speaker, which means it's going to punch out a lot of bass, which means it's going to sound epic, it's going to sound loud if you turn it up, and it's also going to give you a lot of clarity in the lower notes of the bass guitar, and that is pretty much where most bass guitarists live. We live on the lower strings and we play really low notes. So your phone speakers can't reproduce that very well. It's why it sounds really thin, really bad. So I'm going to show you a few different headphone options that you should use, and if you don't have headphones, I recommend that you buy at least something, because when we start working stuff out by ear, when we start listening to certain styles of music, and when you start watching me teaching other things, you're going to have to listen on headphones just to get that little bit of definition. Otherwise, you might not be able to hear it, hence why we're talking about analytical listening. So let's look at the different headphone options, and I'll explain the benefits of each one. So our first option, because we live in the modern age and we live in the digital age, these are wireless headphones. Obviously, you can have AirPods, you can have loads of other options, but once again, the speakers that you find in these kinds of headphones are quite small and they're not super powerful, which means the bass frequencies and the bass clarity, which means how clear the bass guitar is, isn't 100%. It's okay, it's better than your phone speakers. It's not going to be super clear if you're listening to a lot of bass heavy music on these things. Obviously, once again, it's actually better than your phone speakers, so if you want to invest in some of these or you have some, awesome. It's going to help a little, but you might struggle to hear the bass guitar, so just be aware that if you've got these kinds of headphones, there are better options out there on the market, and I'm going to show you something that's a little bit more powerful and something that's a bit better. So the second option that we've got is over-the-top headphones, and these are slightly bigger, slightly harder to kind of carry around, less portable, but these are going to be slightly better to give you more definition on the bass and the bottom end of the song, and it's because the speakers are bigger and because they actually block out a little bit of external noise because they go over the top of your ear and over the top of your head. So it doesn't matter what brand you get, these are just slightly bigger, which means slightly better, and you can actually check the specs of any headphones that you've got just to double check if they're going to give you a lot more clarity in the bottom end of it. And the bigger the bottom end and the better the clarity, the more bass guitar you're going to be able to hear. So that is your second option, and I recommend having some anyway, just in case, because you never know when you might need to listen to a song that doesn't have a lot of bass in it. And if it doesn't have a lot of bass and it's really difficult to hear, this is going to help a lot, and it's definitely helped me in the past, so it's definitely something you should check out. So our third option is in-ear monitors, and these are basically headphones that have speakers and drivers, and a driver is basically a fancy word for a speaker or an amplifier that is inbuilt into the headphone. These go slightly further into your ear canal, and that gives you slightly more separation in terms of internal and external sound. And what I mean by that is internal is the sound that's coming from the headphone itself. External is all the noise externally around you. So traffic, someone talking to you, your mom or dad complaining that you're listening to your music too loud, those kind of things. So these are what professional musicians use. You can get cheaper ones and more expensive ones, and it's something that you might want to look into, because these, if you buy the right type, so definitely check out how many drivers are inside, because you can get 2, 3, 4, you can literally get loads, and the higher the number in drivers, the more clarity you get in terms of sound. So you want to check out how many drivers are in the headphone and the in-ear monitor before you buy them. but they're going to give you a lot of definition when you're listening to songs that don't have a lot of bass in them, when you can't hear the bass guitar for whatever reason, because some songs are definitely easier than others to hear the low end. So these are really, really cool and worth investing in if you do want to. And these you can get over the counter. These are bog standard in-ear monitors, but they're definitely worth it, and you probably should go check some out. These are Shure, but you can obviously get any brand you like. Once again, it's just to let you know that these things do exist, because a lot of musicians when they first start out, and a lot of bass players when they first learn, don't realize in-ear monitors are a thing, and they don't realize what they are. So these are just your bog standard in-ear monitors. So what I'll do now is I'll show you my custom molded in-ears, and that is a custom mold of my ear. And what that's going to do is that's going to show you what the difference is. I'll explain why, and you can also see the internal workings. So you can see what the drivers and the speakers look like in the actual in-ear monitors as well. So our final option in terms of analytical listening for equipment that you might want to look into is custom molded in-ears. And these weird jelly things on the top are custom molds of my actual ear, which means when I put them in, it blocks out all external sound. They're really, really tight fitting, but obviously they fit because it's my actual ear. And you can see all the interior workings. You can see all the weird little metals and the silver strips and everything. Those are the drivers and the connections. So these push through a lot of the sound, give me a lot more clarity and definition. And I'm going to be using these in a lot of the videos because it just allows me to have better hearing, and it allows me to just kind of lock in and play bass a lot better because they're just superior in terms of headphones and in terms of monitoring. So if you do want to go professional and you do want to kind of go to the highest level musically, these are definitely worth checking out. So these are custom molded in-ears, and you can get them from loads of different companies. It's just worth checking out. And I'm going to be using these to listen to a lot of songs, work out a lot of the stuff we're going to go through, and yeah, they're just amazing. Basically, that is the general gist of it. So obviously, depending on what headphones you've got at the minute, just use those, stick with them because they're going to be really useful, and maybe invest in some better headphones as you go through, because the better quality of the headphone or the monitoring, the better you're going to be able to hear the bass. So that is some of the stuff you might want to look into. And the final thing we want to talk about with analytical listening is we want to actually get used to how the bass sounds. So all I want you to do is plug it in, make sure that you can hear it. You don't need to whack the volume full blast so you blow the windows out. We're not talking about that. Just make sure it's a decent level, and I want you to play each string. Just hit it, let it ring out, and get used to how it sounds. So like this. And I want you to do that as many times as you have to, just so you can get used to what the bass guitar sounds like. Because if you don't know what a bass sounds like in general, how are you supposed to hear it in a song? So it's cool having headphones and all this fancy equipment, but if you don't know what it sounds like in general, you're not really going to get very far. So get used to how your bass guitar sounds, get used to listening to your favorite song, try and jump in as deep as you have to go in terms of listening to your actual part. So try and get used to clapping it or humming it. It doesn't have to be perfect, you just need to make sure you can hear it. And then once you're getting used to your bass guitar sound, I'll see you in the next video and we'll actually start playing some cool stuff.